Ask the Expert is brought to you by Auger Hollingsworth Accident and Injury Lawyers.
Ask the Expert with Brenda Hollingsworth from Auger Hollingsworth. We're going to be going through a few scenarios that Brenda has seen in her own personal injury law practice and what you should do and know if you're going through something similar. I want to remind you that Ask the Expert is for information purposes only, and you should always speak with your attorney before making any decisions on legal matters. And we want to hear from you. If you have a question for Brenda, you can feel free to phone in with your question of your own. The information's on your screen, 613-789-6559, extension 2803, ottawa.morning@ctv.ca is our email address. And Brenda joins us in studio. Great to see you again,
nice
Brenda.
to see you.
Excellent. So here's a scenario that you sometimes see. You
Yep.
say you rent your home, your walkway has some pavement on it, perhaps it's uneven, someone trips and falls. What's your level of responsibility if someone like a delivery person is coming to your home?
Yeah, so as a tenant, it's often unclear what your responsibilities are. So if it's something like a pothole on the walkway or a paving stone that's out of place, chances are that under your lease, that's the responsibility of the landlord.
Okay.
Chances are. Now, people's leases can be different, but it's gonna come back to, you know, what's in the lease. But something like that, if you notice it, you want to make sure that you tell the landlord.
For sure.
Right? But chances are it's going to be the landlord. You might get roped into it initially, but probably the landlord's insurance is going to cover you and you're not going to have a problem.
Okay. Let's talk about a scenario where winter time.
Yeah.
It's icy.
It's coming.
Who's responsible for perhaps salting the paveway or walkway or driveway in a similar situation?
Yeah, so this is where it gets a little bit different. Something like infrastructure, like pavement or paving stones is one thing.
Yeah.
But when it comes to cleaning your walkway, shoveling, salting maybe the stairs that come out of your house, it's very likely, it's not for sure, but it's very likely that your lease requires you to do that. And there was just a case decided in the last 2 weeks here in Ottawa where a judge decided that it was actually the tenant's responsibility to do the landing and the stairs out of their apartment,
right,
because that was part of regular cleaning and maintenance that you'd expect of a tenant.
Right.
So even if your landlord does your driveway and generally does the walkway, you're still going to want to make sure that it's that basic level of safe, even if you're a tenant. And of course, if you are a tenant, it's really, really important to have tenant insurance to protect you against liability, because you're probably still what we call an occupier of the property. And if you get sued, you want to have coverage.
Certainly.
Tenant insurance is generally not that expensive, so it's something that you should have as a renter.
Does it make a difference if you have an absentee landlord, like someone who lives in a different property further away versus someone who lives in that same multi-unit dwelling and perhaps you have the basement apartment?
Yeah, so it definitely would. If the owner of the property lives on site, they are likely going to be found to be the owner and the occupier and probably will have responsibility. But we have seen situations where part of tenants' rent is doing certain maintenance things.
Got it.
So one time we had a guy come in and say he slipped and fell at his property, and he was a renter and he was very frustrated. And so, okay, well, who typically did the salt and sand? Well, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, they paid me to do it, but I didn't do it this day and I fell. Like, okay, well, you're not going to have a case, right? Like, if you're responsible for it, you're not going to have a case.
Got it.
But, yeah, if the landlord's on site, it's probably his or her job, but you want to make sure it's clear.